Good evening, everyone. Yeah, saying you are live,
Yeah, of course.
and
Super
you joined.
excited.
Yeah, you joined right on time. I mean, I really appreciate it.
I was doing the countdown. I was like, okay, one more
Okay.
minute. Yeah,
So was
definitely.
I. So real quick, and I want to welcome everyone to my Career Chronicles episode 12. I mean, we made it. We've been running this since episode 1 and all the way to episode 12. And guess what? We have a very special and important guest right here on episode 12. I'm going to do a very quick and brief introduction. He's going to do all of the details. And my guest for today is S.A. Adeyeye, a human resource generalist at Microsoft. I mean, that's the when we talk about the big companies in this planet Earth, that is where it all begins. And he went all the way from the University of Lagos, where he was the overall best graduating student. Guys, his profile is not, I don't know, I don't want to go into all of his profile. It's a whole lot. And then went on to do his MBA at the Raymond and James Mary and
William and
correct me,
Mary, yeah.
yeah, business school. And right here for today, we are going to be talking about starting and building a career in human resources management. And of course, there is more to it. There is more to it than that. I typically tell people that my Career Chronicles is the podcast where we help people to talk about the part of their career journey you cannot find on LinkedIn. And
Mhm.
for this man here, I am very sure there are over 100 things about him you are never going to find on LinkedIn. So, Seyi, if you are ready, I am ready.
Of course, super excited and super ready. And once again, thanks for having me on your platform to speak.
Okay, and let's get into the real business of the day. And shout out to everyone who will be joining us live. And as we usually do it over here, if you have any question, comments, I mean, the comment is open. You just want to quickly tell us where you're joining from, your name. And if you have any question for Shane on this show, just put it out there. And then we are going to be addressing those questions live right here on the show. And in my conventional way, I love to ask the very conventional question, first things first. And the question is, let's get to know you. Please, it's not the tell us about yourself of the interview. I don't have any job for you. So, I mean, tell us about growing up, how has it been, all of the journey from growing up until maybe the recent past. That's the first question I love to start with, Shane. Over to you.
Of course, of course. Yeah. My name is Seyi. I was born and raised in Lagos, and for the biggest part of my life, I lived in Lagos, so I didn't really like go to other places. It was mostly in Lagos, um, and then I went through a public secondary school. From there, went to. Funny enough, most people probably don't know this. Well, before I went to uni, like I went to Yaba Tech first of all.
Oh, I see
Um,
that.
so I went to Yaba Tech. I was, you know, assigned. So I took up a course in Yaba Tech, and then I was like, oh, okay, maybe I should just go to Unilag. So I did not even finish Yaba Tech. That's another thing people don't know. I went to Yaba Tech, did one semester, and then I left. And then I got into the University of Lagos, you know, and then University of Lagos was, where I started like, living on my own, doing things by myself. Some of those things I wasn't like new to because I grew up in a family where my siblings were at least 11 years older than I am, you
Whoa.
know. So it was more like I was learning to be an adult at a very young age. So if there is reason why I'm very, very independent and I am being considered a lone wolf, it is because I grew up creating my own entertainment. I grew up creating my own trajectory. I grew up like just doing things for myself. So I didn't really like have so much like connection with my siblings at first, because the things they were thinking about I could not comprehend,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
I was just in my own world, like just doing my own things. So that was kind of like my experience growing up. And then I went to the University of Lagos, of course. I from my first day at the University of Lagos, I was determined and I was very, very clear about what I wanted out of the experience. I knew I prior to then I was just like an average person. I'm still an average person anyways. But I just knew that being average required that I put in more, and I started to think about something very earlier on in my life, which was the fact that I'm not special. So the fact that I'm not special makes me realize that I need to put more work. I need to do things, more than every other person. I need to go extra miles, right? So when I went to University of Lagos, I was very, very clear about what I wanted for myself, and was kind of like, okay, I wanted to make a name. At least let me just win one award. That was my goal, because I feel like prior to then I didn't even win anything. I was just like just going through life, I was
Right.
like, let me just make a name for myself at least. Then I went to University of Lagos. Yes, got uh, um, the best graduate student awards. Through, the whole of university. I was super excited, and then right after that, I felt like, oh, what's next now? Um, so from there, I went on to start doing my startup company. I had a startup company in Nigeria as well. Two startups actually that I
Oh,
had in Nigeria. And it was, well, I mean, one failed, the other one was successful because I sold the other one. One failed, and that's life, right? Want to tell you the truth, want to tell the good part, the ugly,
uh-huh,
the not too good part, right? So that's, I believe that's what we're doing here. So
uh-huh.
definitely I had a startup that failed. I had the other one that was successful, and then, outside of that, I felt like I was at a point in life where I felt like if I continue to go at this pace, the growth is going to be limited. And I was like, What else can I do? How can I advance myself, right? How can I make sure that I'm progressing, I'm seeing growth? That was when the decision to get my MBA came in, right? So I made that decision to get my MBA. I've got my MBA. Now I'm working with, people say it's the biggest company in the world right
It
now.
is.
I mean, even facts, numbers, figures definitely prove that. Stats
Yeah,
prove that.
speak for itself.
Yeah, you know why I say people say it's because sometimes it feels so unreal to me. Like, wow,
You are
this is a
right there,
company that,
right?
like really, like, it feels so unreal to me. Like, wow, I'm with Microsoft. Like,
Hmm.
I never like saw that I would be here, but I just knew that I could get better. And that's
Right.
another thing I think I want to really kind of like nail today is sometimes you don't get to see where you need to be, but
Hmm.
just follow the instincts that you need to be in a different place. Right. Just
Okay.
if you have that inclination that, you know what, I think I can fly higher than where I am right now. Follow it. Right. You don't necessarily need to see where, or be very, very clear, 100% clear about where that place is. But just following that instinct that you need to be you need to be playing in a higher league can really help a lot, because that helps you make the first move. And that is all you need. Making that first step, which is going to lead to the next step, to the next step, is what really gets people to where they need to be, right? So that was kind of like what I did. And then today I have a career at Microsoft. I work in the HR department, and it's been so many growth even since I joined the company. Like, another thing that I also love about the company is the fact that you joined at this level, and over the years you can see yourself climbing. You continue to experience growth, and that's
Hmm.
one thing that I love, right? So yeah, so that's kind of like my brief story of how I was born in an area called K2 Lagos. Everybody, if you know K2, you know what I'm talking about. It's not like a touch area.
Yeah.
Moved from K2, walk through life, and then now I'm in Seattle, in the US. So
Okay, that's such an interesting story. And shout out to everyone who is joining us live. Kaden, I see you. Kamarezuma, I see you, and every other person joining us live. Feel free to tell us where you're joining from, and then maybe drop your question. Uh, Shane, let's unpack something here real quick before we dive into the whole career thing. I mean, you are this everyday person who went to the University of Lagos to study insurance, and then you worked your way to graduating as the overall best student in the school, not your department. I mean, you are already the overall in your department before we start talking about the faculty and then this school. This is unprecedented. It's a huge success that people, so thousands of people dream for it, but at the end of the day, there has to be that one person. And then at a commencement service that has maybe, I don't know, Unilac might be graduating maybe 10,000 or 5,000, whatever number in one event, you are the
Mhm.
number one person in the school. And that's a very huge success, and all eyes are on you. So I'm just trying to understand what that feeling was like after that moment. Because let's be for real here, you are still young at that time. There are still so many things you've not figured out, even if you are this successful person at that event.
Mm-hmm.
So between that, the euphoria of that big, huge success, and then trying to figure out what am I going to do, what was that transition like at that time? I'm really curious to know what that whole journey, it
That
feels like, what was that gap like, and how were you like making up for all of the events around that time?
yeah, that what I'm about to share right now is not probably the sweet story people want to hear, but
Go for it. That's
I'll
what
tell
we
you,
need here.
I'll tell you like right after that, I went into, I would say, a little depression. Right after that, and the reason was because you know I felt like being the best graduate student was gonna like open all the doors for me, honestly. And it did open doors. I'm not gonna lie, it did open doors, which even led to how I almost had like 100%
Shane, I think you are kind of, I don't seem to hear you again. Yeah. He's about to
I
talk
feel like I'm
about, yeah, maybe you need to rejoin. You sort of just black out. I don't know if something interrupted.
let me see if I can refresh. Can you see me now? I think you should.
No, no. Do you
No.
want to rejoin real quick? Kind of
Okay,
just
let me
pop out
quickly,
of
yeah,
it.
let me quickly rejoin real
Yeah,
quick.
that works. Yeah. Yeah, so that's part of the story I'm very interested in, because like we typically say in my career chronicles, we bring people here to talk about the path of their career that you are not going to find on LinkedIn. I mean, you go to Shane's LinkedIn, you're not going to find the fact that after graduating as a best graduating student, he probably was depressed, like he said here, but nobody talks about those things typically. And that's exactly why we bring people on this show to talk about the part of their career that you're not going to find on LinkedIn. So, once again, everyone, welcome to my Career Chronicles episode 11. And for today, I am talking to Adeyeye, who is a human resources generalist. Oh, you made it back. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
thank
we're
you.
talking about, the euphoria of graduating as the best graduating student from the whole school, and then after all of that big success in the city, in the school, how do you figure your life from that point to, finding clarity? Because let's be for real here, you are a young person. There's still so many things that are not sorted. How was that part of the journey?
Yeah, yeah. Just before I went off, yeah, like I said, it was like I was at this peak, and then I just like took a nosedive all the way down because right after the convocation, the announcements, the awards, the sharing from people, it felt like, what am I going to do next? Like I feel like I didn't have that clarity of, okay, what's next? You know, and like I said, linking back to my story, I grew up in a family where I was kind of like figuring things out myself, right? Don't
Mhm.
forget that. So I didn't really have much direction at that point, and I just felt like things would just like, click. Like, oh, well, you've done your part. Like, things will just click, and then I'll get like my high paying job, and you know I'll be so nice. I'll be
Become
so
this big
like I'll be
boy in
proud of
town.
myself. That was the idea that I had in my head, and then reality dawned on me, and it was like, oh, getting academic excellence was one part of the step. It's not the entire process. It's just one. It's just a phase, And by the time I realized that, I was like, oh wow, I didn't know like there was so much more to it, you know. Because the thing is this: people say, what gets you to where you are right now, it's probably not what's going to take you further. So at every
Right.
point when you hit a milestone, you definitely want to figure out what's that thing that I need to propel me to the next level, right? So, but for me, I just felt like getting there was like, I've arrived, something like that. And then I was humbled when my first job was offering me 50,000 naira.
You don't say.
50,000 naira for those in the
Best
US. That's
graduating
that's
student, overall best.
like for those in the US, $50,000, 50,000 naira is like can let's quickly do that conversion. That's probably like
Like 27 bucks, about $27. I know it's less than
yeah,
$30.
yeah,
Something
less than
like
$40, of course.
yeah, yeah.
So imagine earning less than $40 per month, not per hour. Okay. After graduating as the overall best student, I was like, whoa, this is my reality right now. And the thing is this, I knew nobody was gonna come to help me, right? And that's another thing I think I want to learn here is don't get used to being the victim of life, right? You need to assess your situation and say, okay, this is where I am, this is my reality. What do I need to do? Not who is going to come rescue me or who's going to come save me or who's going to help me. Now, I'm saying this because as Nigerians, we always have that has been like ingrained in us so much. Like even from growing up to going to our religious places, we're always praying for a helper. We're always praying for somebody to come alleviate, you know, come someone to come elevate us, someone to come alleviate our pain, somebody to
Kind of
come
a
like that.
savior kind of
Yeah, like somebody to just show and then make our
save
situation
us.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want that savior, right? But for me, I quickly learned that I need to make the move. I need to be that person. And what matters is it is not the 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 volume or the quantity of the number. It's not about like making really major moves, but it's just about making a move. Right. It's not like, oh, I need to get like 10 million naira now and that's gonna help me. No, it's about like, okay, I need to like get 100 naira. I need to get my first $1. Like because it is that move that then propels you to get better. Because the truth is this: we were not in fact nobody was fully baked from birth.
Mm, mm.
We start to realize our potential as we journey through life,
Right.
right? And sometimes nature curates certain events that puts us in a very uncomfortable way that then make us like realize some of our potential. Now, if we grew up having all we needed, there's less chance of us like really tapping into our potential. Some people go into singing, for example, because poverty, Sapa wants to kill them. And they're like, hey, what do I have to offer?
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying, right?
Got you. Yeah.
Like some of the people who we see that are winning today came from a place of being in their lowest of low. And out of that was what gave birth to what we now celebrate about them today. Right.
Mhm.
So that was kind of like what my story was too. I was like, oh, my 50,000 naira job was there. I didn't get any support from most people. Even as at then, there was like this political figure that came to my family house. It was around this campaign period. I don't want to go into politics, so I'm not going to mention names and all of that. But
Fine.
like like they came to our house. It was like, oh, you were the best graduate student. Oh, you know what? We're going to sponsor your masters. You go and just go get admission. Come back. We're going to do this for you. And
Alpha.
then, bro, you already know the story. You already know where this is going to land. So I went to get that admission, and I was like, hello, oh, I'm super excited. I got the admission. Guess what? No reply. And they were, you know what? It was so funny. They even went as far as, oh, okay, you've gotten the admission. Send us the letter. Send us your passport. Da, 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 da. And then it was like, oh well, that was how that died down. But then even I still had the savior thing in my head, that thinking that somebody would just come save me. Um, but then when I realized that nothing was really going forward, and I think I've not even shared this, for a period of time, I did Uber. I went from graduating from the University of Lagos to being a Uber driver, where people will insult you and say so many things at you, and you're like, man, this life. I did Uber. I opened a POS shop.
Okay.
See,
Two startups now.
bro. I put a few. Whenever I see that meme online, where they be like, basically I need to see them don't open POS shop. I feel
It's
like
real.
that
It's real
generated
to
for me.
you.
It looks so real to me because I'm like, that was my story.
Right.
Yeah, I went to like doing that, to like different hustles, like at some point I was contributing. Maybe I should start like helping people in my, the small shop owners, start doing bookkeeping for them, because I was, and I would say that one thing that I think really alleviated me from 50,000 naira salary earner to now becoming somebody who earns more than that in an hour is the fact that I knew that there was something better for me.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that the moment I was in was not defining, was not going to be my last state. It wasn't going to be where I was destined for. I knew that there was more, you know, and I could see what was possible. That's another thing, right? Sometimes you feel like you're the best if you're amongst people who are within the same level, just like you. You can't see what's possible. You can't see possibilities. And when you can't see possibilities, you're contented with what you have right now. You're very comfortable about the things that are coming or the things that are in your life right now. Right. So even though I was going through all of that, I could see the potential of wow, there is something that I can be handling. Now let me tell you, for example, and this might provoke some people right now, which is the fact that if you think about the fact that you are in a country and your annual salary is what somebody earns in 2 weeks in a different country. Is that not thought provoking? Which
Mm-hmm.
means now I have to work 50 years if I'm still on that same salary. I have to work 50 years, right, to earn what that person would earn in 2 years.
Ridiculous.
You see that? You see the math.
Yeah.
You see the math. Because now your own 50 weeks, 52 weeks, let's say 50 weeks, your own 50 weeks, right, is what somebody is earning in less weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So which means now what does that mean? That means I can literally go and retire without earning what somebody is earning in 2 years.
Yeah.
And that defines the entirety of my career in a different country. Now, one thing that I think is also like the harsh truth that I quickly discovered was the fact that somebody said there are talents everywhere, but opportunities are not everywhere.
I agree.
And it was more of like I knew that, and I was like, you know what? I need to go to where there is the opportunity. Now, I'll tell you this: Nigerians do not lack talent. People do not lack talent. We have so many talented people, but what we lack is the opportunity. Now, what makes us different from the other countries where people are flourishing, where you see Nigerians go and they go and flourish, is the fact that there is that opportunity, and we've been made to be hungry for that opportunity.
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
been wired by our situation to be hungry for that opportunity, and that's why when you see us go outside, we are like beasts out there. We're killing it. We are doing so many great things.
Shane, I feel like we have so many things to talk about,
Yeah,
and but right now I want to take a quick jump and
just
run into your career working as a human resources generalist at Microsoft. I mean, I know that's not even where you started. You had like a previous role. Before then, you intern. But let's start from the very basics. I feel like we just hear human resources management or human
mhm.
resources generalist. I'm not about to pretend that everyone knows what these things mean. And there is even the people that are called recruiters, which is like a completely different thing from human resource management or something like that. But so my question to you, career wise now, is who is a human resource personnel generalist? Who are you? Like with respect to what you do, like if you were to say, if you were to define that, who is that person?
Yeah, yeah. At a company as big as Microsoft, it might not necessarily be what people experience in a smaller company.
Hmm.
But a human resource generalist at Microsoft is someone who is not tied to any specific areas within the human resource world, right? So we have recruiting world, we have the performance and development, We have people who do employee relations. We have people who do compensation as part of like human resources, right? So as a generalist, you're not like tied to one of those.
Okay.
It's more like you're
Across
doing
like
everything.
different
Exactly.
areas.
Exactly. You go across different areas. And even right now at the company, I'm in the rotational program, which kind of like justifies that, right? Which means
Oh,
I've bounced across different areas in
yeah,
HR over the years, right? So if you think about the generalist, just from the word generalist, like
got
you're not
you.
like specialized in one particular area, but you're like
Mhm.
doing everything.
Okay, let's talk about like a combination of your education and how that ties down to what you do currently. I mean, you had your bachelor's in insurance and then you went on to do your MBA. And as someone who had their bachelor's in insurance, typically maybe you would expect you to be at a bank or work at an insurance company. I mean, you did work at an insurance company before doing
Hmm.
your MBA. Yeah, and of course, maybe the MBA was supposed to be like a transitioning. But the real question here is vis-a-vis your role, do you see like the connection? How do you think like your education has really contributed to like moving you from that side to the work you do now? Do you see that education being useful at all? Because there's this argument about, oh my God, you don't need to go to school, you don't need
Mm-hmm.
education to do this. I don't know. Maybe you would have been Microsoft CEO without education. I don't know. I will allow you to tell me if it would have been possible without the school
Well,
and all of this.
yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I wouldn't say there's like any direct connection, but I would say that going through school, getting my degree in insurance kind of like also prepped me for my current role. Because the truth is this, right? Everything that I every of the value that I bring to my current role was not necessarily gotten within the HR space. There were things that I acquired from even my first degree in insurance. So there were things that I acquired from my second degree, getting my MBA, right? So I'd say it's a fusion of everything that makes me very useful, because now, because of my diverse background, I don't necessarily think like HR.
Right.
I think differently. I think like, oh, how would the business think? Right. So I think that's one unique perspective that I bring to my team that my team currently appreciates. So and I think that's, so I wouldn't say education is scam. I wouldn't say it's not related. I would say that it helps you get a different perspective outside of just like, okay, doing the HR things. You can think like, okay, how should I think about it differently? Because I feel like education kind of like wires you to think differently, right? And sometimes even there, if there's no direct connection between your career and your background, there are always transferable skills that you can bring on from whatever you've acquired into the
Mhm.
work that you're doing. Because one thing we know as of today, which I'm sure you know, is that work is evolving. The
Mhm.
workforce is evolving. Everything is changing, right? So it's all about like bringing different perspective, and the way things used to be done are not the way people are currently doing things right now, right? So I don't think like you have to have like that direct connection. In my case, it wasn't that. So but I would say that I was still able to like function within the HR space because some of the transferable skills were applicable to HR, and then I also had to like learn on the job as well.
Okay, Shane, let's talk about landing a role at Microsoft. I mean, this is a global company, and every day, hundreds of thousands of people apply to work at this company every other day. I mean, you work in Asia and you probably have access to that kind of information. And then you are just the young man who came from Nigeria to the US, did your MBA, and then you the next day or the next year you are sitting in Microsoft and you're working from the world's global company. Let's talk about that. How was that process for you? Did you have to know the CEO, or your uncle your uncle knows the CTO who help you to submit your resume? Or like, because I feel like these things are not talked about, so so tell us, how was that
Yeah.
process like, and let's see if there is a couple of things we can learn from that whole part of the journey.
Of course, of course. I wish I had a uncle that could help me talk to the CEO. uh, but yeah, but I would say my experience was very hard. I'm not gonna sugarcoat and be like, "Oh, it was easy." No, it wasn't that easy. Just like you said, over over 100,000 people applied to the same company, right? And I would say that one thing that I did was I was very intentional when I applied, and I was willing to go above and beyond, to kind of like make sure I get my foot in the door, right? And that required like hours of prepping, hours of rehearsing, hours of like preparing for my interview, hours of like leveraging others to act like my interviewer, mock interviews that I did, a lot of that, you know um and that's one of the things that I shared earlier on, which is like you don't have to have that mentality of you need someone to come save you. You have to know that sometimes you need to put in the work, you need to do things and stay informed. Now, one thing I would say is this, the price for ignorance is being paid daily by those who are ignorant, right? And not being informed is not an excuse in this day and age, right? So I would say that one thing that I did was when I was applying, I had to look out for how do I make sure that my resume is tailored for this job, first of all, right? So when that happened, and then I was invited for the interview, that was when the work actually started.
Mm.
And I'm not even kidding. I had over 10 hours of like practicing, you know, kind of like researching and kind of like understanding what does this company want? Am I a good fit? How do I show that? How do I show that versus like telling that during my interview? Like, what does the interview process look like? I started to like engage people. And that's another thing, right? We can't necessarily win all by ourselves. We need people too. You need a community. And I started to tap into my friends. I'm like, hey, what's up, bro? These are the questions. Act like my interviewer, give me feedback, right? I did that with so many people, young, old, people in different places, and I feel like some people even got tired of me, like, hey, this guy again, But I was very, very determined about like what I wanted and how I wanted to get into the door, and I knew how I needed to get into the door was to kind of like be prepared. So one thing I would say from the question you asked is I was very, very prepared for it.
Mhm.
I put in so much work. And even as far as I went to a conference and I started asking people to interview me at that conference just so I get ready for it, you know. And then in fact, when I went to the conference, I was even practicing at that conference. So it was a lot of practice, 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 practice. And by the time I did my first interview, I definitely knew I was going to be called back for a second round of interview because you get to a point where you have an interview and you feel so comfortable, like you're expressing yourself, and all of that. I was doing it, being very authentic, telling my story. Right, I wasn't like being very superficial about things. I was telling my story of, hey, this is where I came from. This is my background. This, if you don't want me, just that's your own problem, but this is who I am.
Right.
Yeah, so I was very, very authentic about it, and I think that's one thing that the company values is you being authentic about your story, honing your story, right?
Mhm.
I would say that growing up I wasn't this much confident as a person. Again, maybe I'll help bring in. We're brought up in a household, mostly Nigerians actually feel like this sometimes. We're brought up in a household where we're told to obey. You only get food when you obey. Think about that.
Yeah.
You only get allowance when you obey. We're taught to obey. We're not taught to like necessarily challenge the status quo. We're not taught to necessarily be ourselves. We're taught to conform so that we're deemed accepted. Right. So I had to like really unlearn that at that moment and
Mhm.
say, you know what, I want to be myself. I want to be my generation. I want to speak authentically about who I am. And I think that was one of the things that the recruiters saw. And then they got interested in me and called me for the next interview. So again, like I said, a lot of preparation, um, a lot of self-awareness and confidence were the things that I learned during the process while I was preparing. I would say those were the things that really helped me.
Okay. And for anyone that missed it, hours of preparation, you need to unlearn some things and
Mhm.
be yourself. Authenticity is very, very important.
Yeah.
some more preparations again and leverage community to further prepare. You can get your friends to do like mock interviews for you and give you feedback. And when you get to the interview itself, show some more authenticity, be able to, take pride in your story. Because I mean,
Mm-hmm.
even that your story that you think is not so cute, there are people who are interested out there in your story. And I think I like the way you put it. Of course, tailor your resume to the role in question, and that way you can even get your foot in the door. Because the way I think about it is that if you don't even get invited for an interview because maybe your resume was not good enough, no one cares. You can't even
I
defend
know you got to
yourself.
first exactly.
You can't say you are smart or you're intelligent because you're not even in the face of anybody. You need to first be in somebody's face before you begin to talk about those things. That's something very big. I wanted to, just be sure that I captured that.
Of course.
But let's talk about like what is the day to day. Like some people out here aspiring to be, maybe they come around and then they see Seyi and they're like, oh my God, I want to be like a human resource generalist like Seyi, or a recruiter, or everything around that career path. And somehow they don't really know what the day to day is like. And sometimes I go to recruiter X or recruiter Twitter, as they call it, and there can be some fighting, and then you just laugh about this thing, and like, okay, that's cool, and then you just move away. So the question really is, what is it like? What's your day to day like? What's your interaction like? Maybe let's call it a day in the life of a human resource generalist. What is it like? Yeah, I think you got muted again, Shay. You got muted again. If you can hear me, you got muted again. Uh, no, you got muted again. Yeah. Mm-mm. I'm not sure. Is your headset connected? Okay, I think he has to rejoin. All right, and we are trying to round this up real quick. All right, Shane is back to us, and then okay, you made
Yeah,
it back.
thank you so much. I don't know. People have been calling me. I don't know why.
Yeah, sorry
I
about
think
that.
that was affecting. Yeah. So, but then, yeah. Yes, the day to day at Microsoft, I would say that being in HR, right? Like I said, one of the things that we're doing at Microsoft as an HR is that we're trying to, which is something that I'm sensing. Okay, right? This is my own opinion. This is my own view, by the way, is the fact that we're trying to go beyond just being HR to being more of business partners, right? So, and this is how we're doing that. We're thinking about how do we learn more about the business. So this is me telling you what the day to day looks like. Now, the day to day looks like we trying to understand the business goals, objectives, and then understanding how do we key into that when you think about the people, right? And I would say for me currently, my role, my day to day involves having a couple of meetings, of course, because you want to like have conversations with people, you want to collaborate with people, you want to like be part of a project and all of that, right? So I do that. I engage in a lot of meetings. I share my opinions, get feedback from people, and then after that, I go back to my work, which is maybe, for example, a project that I'm leading. Right, you need to make sure things are like moving on smoothly. And then I would say that typically one of the other things that I do every day is also like create some time to like learn about the business, learn about like AI, for example. AI is like growing and it's growing really rapidly, right? So kind of like learning about AI, sometimes you want to take some trainings on the side. But for the most part, I would say it's mostly collaboration meetings, either a meeting you are leading or a meeting someone else is facilitating, and then you have to like contribute, share your ideas and all of that. So I say on a day-to-day basis, what we do is just create things. We solve problems. We think about what do we need to do. Sometimes we look at data and say, okay, well, this is what the data is saying, right? So we start to make actions. We start to consult with stakeholders on a day-to-day basis, and that's what most of my meetings is. So I would say, in a very short words, on a day-to-day basis, I do a lot of like consultation with stakeholders, and I would say I do a lot of like collaborating and a lot of like brainstorming that happens every single day. And outside of that is then personal learnings.
Let's talk about AI. now
Yeah.
that
Oh my
now that
god.
we are here, yeah,
Yeah.
because
That's
whether
that's
you you like it or not, AI is changing things, is disrupting industries, is recalibrating career path, and you are even at that very center space of where people, sort of launch their career from, talking about the whole human resources space. How do you see, in your own opinion, how do you see, the ability to like manage the career disruption caused by AI? How do you think all of that can be managed, especially for new career people? I mean, I when you started your career, it was there, but I think the boost as the day goes by, the whole boost is like it's an upward trend. So what are you seeing in terms of being able to manage the disruption AI is causing to industry, especially to career?
Yeah, I would say, and I would say, for this one, I know, asked the same question, from one of our leaders, um, within my org, and then the question, his response was more around like, hey, AI is another phase, in the era of like development, technological development. And just like every of the changes we've seen in the past, right, it's going to change how we think about things. It's going to change how we do things.
Mhm.
It's going to require a lot of like reskilling, it's going to require a lot of like adaptation, right? So the truth is this, definitely AI would replace some jobs, of course, and it would create other jobs, right? And the truth is this, for people, I would say I wouldn't worry about like if AI is going to come for my job, but I would be more concerned about how can I leverage AI, or how can I position myself in a place where, with the evolution, with the change that is coming, I'm in a better place, right? I can still tag along. I won't get swept back in the past, right? So something like that. So, and to your question, right? AI is definitely going to change some certain things that do not require human intervention. Now, say for example, maybe payroll, for example. I'm not. This again. This is not an expert opinion. This is just
Mhm.
me just sharing examples, right? So maybe for
Yeah.
example, things that can be automated. I
Hmm.
think AI can definitely take away those things, right? But when it comes to, for example, uh, uh, um, things that involve humans, someone is having issue with their boss, for example, I wouldn't put AI and say AI should come and resolve that. AI would never do a cover solution. You get what I'm saying, right? So
Yeah.
there are still areas where AI can never touch or replace humans, right? And those positions will definitely still be available for humans to take, right? And and I feel like with AI coming, things are just going to evolve, because I do always tell people with every solution comes another set of problems.
That's so profound. Yeah.
Right, right. And then it's more around, okay, how can I position myself to be the problem solver for the new
Okay.
problem generated? Right? It's just like every other thing. We have internet, we have data center. People said, oh, now this is affecting the environment. That's another problem that was created, right? So for every solution we create in history, I've realized that it always creates some new level of problems that we never saw. Right. So, and then it's now how do you position yourself to now solve this new problem? So, for example, now maybe we automate things. Now, when there's a conflict between, oh, this is what I'm getting, but and this is what I think I deserve. Who's going to resolve that? Humans need to come
Humans.
into
Yeah.
that, right? So things like that, or for example, maybe uh, uh, I feel like AI cannot, for example, be the judge of performance, for example, right? Because AI does not have the emotional intelligence to understand that, oh, it is not always all about the numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you see? So those kind of situations, those kind of problems cannot be solved by AI. AI can just help you know, okay, well, the target was 100. Now, did you make 100 or not? If not, you're
Yeah.
below the mark.
Yeah.
But humans will tell you, oh, the target is 100. Oh, but this happened. Oh, we had this situation happen. Some of this were under our control, some we could not control, right? So you might understand all the context and the emotional intelligence around things versus like AI. So I feel like when it comes to HR, definitely there's going to be some roles that can easily be taken up by AI, but there are also roles that would not. definitely be touched by AI. And for us at Microsoft, what we're thinking about is we're thinking about how can we use AI to further move away from, mundane day-to-day tasks to creating more time for us to think strategically,
Hmm.
right? So we're moving from let AI handle all the set up a meeting, help me record the minutes of the meeting. Let AI handle that. Now, let us use that to then create additional time for us to think strategically, right? So we're thinking more of strategic things versus like, oh, I need to fill up this document, I need to create this Excel file, I need to, so and I feel like that's good because that would improve productivity obviously over time, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, so again, like I said, I don't think AI is going to replace all the jobs. Some jobs will need to, move, and then there's going to be more jobs that will be created from, you know problems that would arise from AI. Because the truth is this: everybody knows AI is not perfect right now, and there are problems that are being anticipated in the future, of course, just like every other innovation. And definitely, God's willing, we're going to be here for it.
Okay. Shane, let's talk about your music career.
Oh,
Probably this probably this is not public knowledge, but those of us that know. And there
of
was no way I
course.
was going to bring you to this show without talking about your music career. Sometimes I'm like, is he an enigma? I mean, he graduated as the best overall best student, went ahead to do his MBA, landed a coveted job at Microsoft. Bro, chill, just have fun. Why are you what are you looking for again? And then I'm jumping on his YouTube, and then I'm seeing him like he's a musician. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Maybe I need to take my guitar lessons more serious this time around because Shay is setting a whole new level. So, but let's just talk about like how is that like? What's the inspiration behind that? How did you even land there? Because I feel like I said again, you have a great career and you could just focus that and then just grow to whatever. So how do you now bring in like a thriving music career by the side that is actually going ways? And I see your Spotify, you have like people following you and all of that. I'm like, okay, well, I will just allow you to just tell us what's this whole thing about.
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, I mean, for me, music has always been something that has been constant in my life as I journey through life. And you know, I've been singing since I was like maybe 10 years old, honestly. But I just never took it seriously. I just felt like, okay, it was just something that I was passionate about. I love it. And I didn't see the business side of things. Um, and, you know, again, like I said, exposure in life matters. If you can see what's possible, it's always the first step to you treading towards that path. Now, when you can't see what's possible, then you probably remain where you are, right? And I think that's it for you in terms of music. For me, going into music was more of like I could see what was possible, and I was willing to be anything that I wanted to be. I didn't want to limit myself to just being who the world wants me to be or fitting into certain stereotypes, right? I feel like every of the things we have was placed there for a reason, right? If you have certain gifts, it was there for a reason. And the
Correct.
truth is this: if you don't use it, it's going to go unnoticed,
Agree.
right? And so many people die with their talents without being noticed over and over again,
Uh-huh.
you know. And the truth is this: to whose lost is that? To whose loss is that? One, to the person who was the talent, first of all, because that was probably a potential you did not explore. Two, to the people who would have probably been impacted, right, by that. I don't know if you see, for example, people who are like maybe actresses, right? They meet people and people are like, "Oh, you impacted my life." Da, 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 da. Now imagine if that person never stood up. Imagine if, for example, Michael Jackson never sang. We would not know who Michael Jackson is. But then we would not miss it because we don't know what we are missing. Do you get what I'm saying, right? We wouldn't like
Yeah.
so it's just more like just do your thing. That was it for me. It was just like, let me just do it. If I want it, if it matters to me, if I care about it enough, I will just go for it. Right. And for me, it wasn't like a matter of like not having the means to do it. It was just more of like, do I want to do it? Does that make sense? Right. So one of the things I probably shouldn't say right now is the fact that sometimes when you attain a certain level in life, mm, it gives you the luxury to try and fail at many things.
Yeah, just like JP Morgan Chess CEO is a DJ.
You know, you get so like you can easily fail at certain things and still like, okay, well,
You
hey, I
still
can still
good,
bounce back. You
right?
know, um, and that's one thing that I would say right now. It's the fact that okay, I feel like if I go into music, music does not work. I still have my career. You know, so you get the point. So that's kind of like where it's coming from, and even knowing that that option exists, I still give it my all. I still try to do the best. I still have to like go hard. People tell me, I'll be like, I can't believe you started singing last year. I'm like, yeah, that's me. That's the attitude I always have. And it's been something that's been constant throughout my life, which is if I want to get something, I go for it. I go as hard as I can go for it.
Hmm.
Right. And even with music, I've committed a lot of time, I've committed a lot of resources to it. You know, I have a team that works with me. Like I treat it like business. I don't handle it like I'm just singing.
Yeah.
You get so, and that's one thing, and I feel like that's one attitude that I have that has really helped me so much. Which is like, want something, go for it. And I'll tell you one story behind why I really went for it was the fact that I had a project when I was back in Virginia, of course in the US, and it was a project where I was studying the life of senior citizens, people who are like 65 and above, who
Hmm.
are retired. And it will amaze you that when I had interactions with them, nobody was talking about their career. They were talking about things they were passionate about. They were talking about family. They were talking about people that matters to them. They were talking about their travel experiences. Now that tells you what is important at a certain stage in life. And now imagine you go through life without like exploring other things that you could possibly be. Now you end up being old and you're bored, and maybe you might have a lot of regrets. So you get
Yeah.
so, and that's music for me. That's music for me was just more of like, if I can sing and I can put words together, why not do it? Why should I let
Right.
anything hold me back? Right. And I feel like that's what people should also take away from here. Like whether it's you starting a career in HR or you wanting to do something else, just do it. Because yes, it might fail, you might be successful, but at least you know you actually tried and you put a work in there. And that's just the story, honestly.
Yeah, I was really interested in that whole music career story because, like you rightly said, there are so many people who are endowed and blessed and even talented, but there is that inertia that just needs to be broken.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, as we begin to round up, I want you, how were you able to break that inertia? I get the part where you talk about the fact that, when you have success at some other level, then you have leverage, then you can begin to try other things. But how were you really able to like break that inertia? You say, you know what, I'm gonna go out there. Were you not worried about the fact that, oh, you could sing and then no one is gonna like your music or no one is gonna follow you on Spotify? How did you break that inertia?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, for one, I first of all dealt with the fear of failure, right? I dealt with the fact that I was scared about failing. I mean, failing was okay, maybe people would not even like it. Or maybe people would be like, why you a guy go and sit down? Or people would just be like, what's doing this one? That was the first thing that I had to first conquer, was the fact that I was scared. I mean, I'm not gonna act like I'm a superhuman here. I was scared. I was definitely scared. I remember when I recorded my first song, I said, let me just get 1,000 people to just listen. That was the goal. That was the benchmark. Like, if I can just get 1,000 people to listen, and guess what? Now I have a song that over 120,000 people have listened to. So
There
it,
we go.
it's it's just like, wow. There's endless possibility, right? But then, just like you said, you need to first of all break away from overthinking things and being scared of failing. Right. I had to take that out the door. Like, okay, maybe I'm overthinking. Because the truth is this: most times we're our own self greatest critics in life. we critique everything. We're like, oh wait, what will people think? How will this land? How will this? But then sometimes we let that overwhelm us from making an actual step, from making the decisions, from making like that move that would propel us towards what we need to get, right? So I think that was one thing that I had to quickly like get out of the way. um and then it was another thing was constantly reminding myself that I am learning as I grow. I didn't start thinking I was going to birth perfection
From day one.
from day one. Exactly. And I think that's also one of the things that hold people back from trying things, is because this starts by now. Imagine from my day one, I'm starting to think, how can my song be better than Ashake's song? Right from day one. Do you know when Ashake has been singing, for example? You get
Yeah.
my point, right?
Yeah.
Now, or saying, oh, how can I want to post and I want 100,000 people to like my post. How? When I just started yesterday. You get
Yeah.
my point, right? So it's just understanding that you can't be perfect from day one. That's not the goal. Even the people you see, they were existing before you got to know them. You only got to know them when they were getting closer to becoming that thing,
I mean,
becoming
many
that
people don't
image.
know that you're doing music.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about
Right
it
now,
here.
you see, right, and go think about most of the people that we know right now. They've been doing it way back, but then
Yep.
then we got to know about them when this finally paid off. And then guess what? We're now comparing ourselves with them at the stage where they've got it together
Yeah.
versus
That's
the
the
stage where they started.
yeah.
You see where that how that could like be so discouraging when you're about to start something, right? So we look at people at their final state, comparing us that we're starting with someone at their final state. So you see that don't work, right? So I think like that's one thing that I had to quickly knock out, which was, hey, people, and I would say this, people try to discourage me, people try to be like, nah, but then it was more of like, well, I believe in myself, it doesn't have to make sense. And
Mm-hmm.
me starting right now means I can make a lot of mistakes along the way. Nobody's gonna notice.
Mm-hmm.
If I sing ta la 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 and five people listen to ta la 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 la, people are like, okay, five people can be like, it's not that good. That's good. At least it's better. I can know that I can improve over time.
Right.
It's up to the point where maybe 5 million people start listening to me. Versus like me having an audience of 5 million people from day one and I'm singing ta la 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 la.
Yeah.
Disaster.
Yeah.
You see, disaster, right? So
True.
just like even career too, right? Even taking tiny back to my career, which is like even my current role right now. I haven't figured everything out. I'm still learning. For example, people will do certain things on my team, and I'll be like, wow, how did this person get this? Like, how are they thinking like this? But
Yeah.
guess what? They've had their career for over 15 years.
Yeah.
And
So
you are like early in career. You see the
yeah.
difference. Like, you can't make certain comparison you cannot make. You can only aspire and say, okay, you know what? This person this person has grown. How do I get there? Right. And the truth is this, sometimes you need to let time come into the picture, because I tell people time is one critical ingredient in everyone's success story. And time is not something you can tamper with. You cannot. You know, you just have to let time do its work. Right. So there are things that you cannot get in 2 months that somebody that got in 15 years have. You get, so it's just the law of nature, right? So you just need to know where you are, be willing to fail, be willing to try, and be self-aware, and be willing to like just do it. That's it. I know that sounds like a cliche right now, but just do it. You just have to, because you just don't know what would come from it.
Yep. Shane, I mean, we should be rounding up right now, but
Yeah,
I
of
think I
course.
have two more questions for you that I don't want
Okay,
us to
I'll make it
miss.
fast. Of
Yeah.
course.
The first one is how have you been leveraging social media to grow your career or even I mean, there's the music career side and then there's the HR career side. How have you been leveraging social media? I know people do LinkedIn, even in job search,
Mhm.
LinkedIn, X, and all of that. How is that helpful to you? Instagram. I know there is your YouTube. Of course, I'm going to put, by the way, for anyone listening right there, go look up Boss on Spotify, YouTube. Of course, I'm going to put all of these on the video and then we can share. But you just go look that up if you are listening to this. But to my question, how have you been leveraging that in your career journey, and how has that been helpful to you so far?
Yeah, in 1 minute I'll answer that. On both fronts, which is kind of like funny enough, there's similarities there, right? On
Mm-hmm.
both fronts, the way I've been leveraging my career is I've been using the social media platform to gain exposure and put myself in front of people that
Mm-hmm.
probably do not know me before. And this is how I do it. I put out things, I put out words, I put out like write-ups for LinkedIn, for example, right? And people are watching. That's one thing you probably don't know. Now, people might not necessarily like what you post, not because they don't like it, but because they're scrolling,
Observation.
yeah, they're just observing. For example, there was a time I was posting regularly about different things, topics at the workplace, and someone reached out and was like, no, I didn't even reach out. I met them in person. They were like, I always see your posts. Keep going at it. It's like, oh wow, people are really observing. People are really seeing things. So I'd say that the best way to leverage those platforms is to put something out. Like your thoughts, put them out. Right. Your take on things, put them out. Let people get to see who you are. Because that's how people sometimes get to feel like they are being invited, welcome to have a conversation with you. So, right, put things out and leave an open-ended question at the end. People would always want to respond and be like, oh, okay. And that's how you start conversations, right? So, because the truth is, even when you need opportunities from people and connection, they would look at your profile, right? And then is it
Absolutely.
like a docile profile that nothing happens there? Right. You need to create that buzz. Again, I know I'm using that word right now. You need to create that buzz around you, right? Create that buzz around you, put out words, talk about things. And people would always want to like be curious to want to know what you have going in your head.
Perfect. Perfect landing. And then the last one before the last one. What is that one thing about your career that is not public knowledge? If we go to your LinkedIn now, we cannot find it. That
Oof,
defining thing that it's not public
that is
knowledge, but it's very defining.
what is oof. I feel like that's a hard one.
I'm not trying
But
to put you on a hot seat right now.
yeah, I'm trying to be like, what's that defining moment? Well, it's hard. I'm not gonna lie, it's hard. I'm trying to think about it right now. Like, what's that what defining moment? But I would say, okay, let me just say some what comes to mind right now. I would say that one thing people don't see on LinkedIn right now that is probably going on in my career is the fact that um I grew from being quiet to saying more things.
See
Now, most people now when I talk to people, they be like, damn, this guy talks a lot, but was never like that. Right. I don't obviously you won't put that on your resume, of course. You won't be like, oh, I used to
Yeah.
be very quiet when I talk. Right. So I'll say that I think that has been one major shift in my career that has helped me a lot in my career,
Mhm.
right? Because I've grown to be more confident, I've grown to be more comfortable in my own ideas and my own thoughts and sharing them with people.
Mhm.
Right. Again, back to my our background, which is be quiet, be obedient, do what you're being told. Don't question authority, right? To now where you're in a state whereby they're like, we welcome your opinions. Your opinion matters. Tell us what you're thinking. How should we go about this? Lead us, right? Me that was last born, I was always following others. You know, I hope you've seen those connections, right? I was last born, always following others.
Fellow last born here. You're
So
welcome.
we are always being told what to do, like to now people now saying, oh, lead us, let us, how should we think about this, right? So I think that was big change. And I would say that being in a company as big as Microsoft has helped me build that muscle a
Mhm.
lot. Right now, I feel like I lead things, I coordinate things much more better, and that has really helped me, grown in my career as well. So I would say maybe that's something that is not on my LinkedIn. Of course, it's not something you can put on your LinkedIn, of course. But yeah, I think, and this is just to encourage people out there that are listening that those of us that are still like, we're getting the things you want. We're not superhumans. We're just regular humans just like you. We have similar backgrounds just like you, not all the best or the most glamorous one. But one thing that has just made us who we are today is the fact that one, we're able to see what is possible. Two, we know that there are opportunities elsewhere and we're going for it. And three, I would say that we know what is required and we're willing to put in the work.
Thank you, Shay. And what is that thing you wanted us to talk about? What is that question you wanted me to ask that I did not ask? And what word of advice do you want to give out to all our listeners out there? And every other person that will be listening to this show. I mean, it's going to be here forever. I wonder what they will be, what you want them to hear in the next 10 years or 50 years or even today that we
Yeah,
will
first
talk
of all,
about here.
yeah, of course, of course. First of all, I would say one, mark today's dates. Currently, I have 40K followers on Instagram. I don't have up to 1 million streams yet, but mark this day that maybe from a year from now, maybe this will be the proof that you need that it is definitely possible. And I want you to mark it that from a year from now, go and look at the stats. You probably go check the number of my followers. You probably see my face more. You probably see that maybe I have over 1 million listeners and all of that, right? It's just to help you think that things are really possible. And even career wise, you'll definitely see growth as well. And basically, what I'm trying to say is that it does not have to be perfect today, but just
Mhm.
keep going, keep believing in yourself. And if you have that inclination or instead that you're different and you need to be in a better place, please follow through. Follow through. Like start asking questions, start thinking about how can I be in a better place, right? So and there were a lot of sacrifices that went into that too. And I would not even lie. Maybe something I didn't share that I also want to share is be willing to pay the price, whatever that is. You'd be willing to pay the price for it. If you don't pay the price, you probably don't go for it. I'll tell some of the people I took a very big financial risk to be where I am today. A very big financial risk. I won't announce that online, but definitely there was a very big financial risk that I took and which paid off, right? So if you don't take risk in life, calculated risk, of course. Think about that, please. If you don't take calculated risk in life, you might never get to the next stage, right?
Mhm.
And you just need to do what you have to do to get to the next stage, right? So that'll be my last words. For most people that are listening, please go get the things you want in life so that you grow to be happy. Because I feel like what makes you all happy is achieving the things they want, not necessarily like you know every other thing. It's having a passion and pursuing it and following through that passion. I think that's what gives the best feeling in this world.
All right, and as we round up now, real quick, coffee or tea, Shay?
Coffee or tea? I'll go for coffee because when I came to the US, my thought of what tea was different.
James.
It changed. When I ordered tea at first, I was hoping for milk, chocolate, and my brother they gave me something I couldn't drink. I was like, "What's this?" So coffee right now.
Okay, Shay is Team Coffee. That's a good one. And guys, that's it on today's episode 12 of my Career Chronicles, talking about starting and building a career in human resources management with Shay. And big shout out to you, Shay, for joining us. I
Yeah,
really
thank
appreciate you
you.
taking the time to share all of this insight with us and everyone that is able to join us. And thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And
Yeah,
that's
thank
bye
thank you
for
for
now.
having us. Thank you so much. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. And thanks for the support too.
All
Bye
right,
bye.
thank you.